which had been followed, which had been followed in the so-called colonial world. So here we find multiculturalism tends to be, as a concept, it tends to be very democratic. It tends to be very, very mutually respectful. It also tends to aim at the preservation and promotion of each culture without any, not to the detriment of any culture. Rather, it tends to stand for the promotion of each culture in the equal manner, in a mutually approving manner, and also in a much more beneficial manner. We all, the question that may arise in this context is that what happens if all the cultures are given equal promotion, and what happens if there is no culture which is considered to be predominant in the human society, or which is not given any position of dominance. We all understand that, given the fact that at any point of time, if any culture tends to be given any kind of a prominence in the human societies, yeah, the PPTs I will share to you after the lecture is over. So let's go with the lecture, then I'll send you the PPT. So here we find that this multiculturalism tends to have come up as a kind of a value system, as a kind of a political arrangement, which stands totally in sharp contrast from that of the colonial mechanism, from that of the framework, governance, socio-governance framework, which was being followed during the days of colonialism. I think when you look into the contemporary period, we find that multiculturalism tends to have taken deep roots. We understand that multiculturalism also has to be understood as a post-colonial phenomenon rather than a colonial phenomenon, because and we will see in the contemporary lecture, given the difficulties that were faced by the human societies, they had no other choice but to opt for multiculturalism as the only sanguine value in order to ensure mutual survival for each of the human community. And when you look into the contemporary period, we'll see that multicultural policies tend to have rightly focused upon the interaction and communication between the different cultures. When you look into the contemporary practices of our own human societies, we'll find that multiculturalism tends to be totally focused upon the mutual interaction, mutual communication that seem to be emphasized in the interaction process between the different cultures which may be living, which may be present within any particular community. And the question that arises here, that what is the need of, I think everyone knows that everyone knows about the importance of the communication, importance of the interaction, because communication or interaction tend to be the process where each of the human being and the community as well tend to ensure each one's benefit without coming in the way of others' benefit to in any kind of a negative manner. So here we find that it has been proved in the study of sociology, in the study of politics, in the study of communication, that it is only through interaction and communication that cultures can only survive. And not only when cultures survive, we also know that human beings also tend to survive because of the mutual interaction, because of the two-way interaction communication process that is all the time present in our own society. And here we find that through interaction and communication, it has been proved that people can be provided with opportunities for appreciation of the differences that may be there present within each of their culture, and also will be able to communicate and interact on a much more broader level in order to so-called advance the concept of multiculturalism. In other words, it is only through communication and interaction people are enabled to appreciate each other's differences, different culture, which may be present within their respective culture, and they are also enabled to interact and communicate on a broader level, which tends to give rise to the emergence of what is known as the concept of multiculturalism. And we also know that when you look into our own society, own contemporary times, we find that there have been many policies which have been enacted by the government, which stand basically for maintenance of diversity and also cultural uniqueness of the people who may be belonging to various different groups. We understand that each time the government policy tends to be enacted by the government policy not only tends to aim at enhancing the cultural practices, it also primarily aims at promoting and also maintaining the existing culture at its own level, so as to not create any kind of socio-political conflict by trying to give prominence to some culture, and also by trying to undermine the other cultures who are present within our human societies. So in order to stay away from conflict, in order to ensure that conflicts do not become a permanent feature in human societies, we have seen that in the contemporary period, no matter whichever government tends to enact its policies, it primarily tends to aim at enacting preservation and promotion of the respective cultures which are present within a particular community, and these have also been representative of the cultural uniqueness of the people who may be belonging to different ethnic groups. Today, when you describe the world today, we tend to describe our own world today as a multi-ethnic world. The world is also described as a pluralist world, because we find there is in any part of the world, in any sovereign country, we find there is more than one culture which is present within the human societies, given the fact in proportion to the different communities of human beings who may be living within that particular society or within that particular nation state. So given the fact that there have been ample varieties of human society, human ethnic groups, there are also ample adequate number of cultures which primarily belong to each of the identified human community that are residing within a particular nation state or within a particular society. And here we find that why the modern day states tend to emphasize on the multicultural aspect of their policy making and policy implementation. It's simply because that they are very clear. They're very clear about the fact that cultural isolation can only help in the preservation of the uniqueness of the local culture of a nation or area. If at all we find that multiculturalism is being practiced by the modern day nation states, it's simply because they feel that only by cultural isolation, and not by any kind of integration, which was a colonial policy, that the uniqueness of the cultural tradition of a particular community can be preserved. It also can be enhanced to a great extent, which might work to the benefit of the running of the nation state, or which might benefit to the governance of the nation state. I think here we find that it is also seen that the multicultural policies which are being practiced by the modern day nation state in the contemporary era tend to be also contributing towards the phenomenon which is widely known as the global cultural diversity. Today, when you not only it is the any nation state which might present a picture of a cultural diversity, we can also see at the global level there is also the phenomenon of global cultural diversity, which tends to also stand for promotion of cultural traditions of each community which may be living in any part of the modern nation state or any part of the world. I think when you talk about, I think after having discussed this particular concept, we tend to get an idea as to multiculturalism tends to be nothing but a policy framework. It's a social ideal, it's a cultural ideal. It is also in the area of governance. It has also emerged as a kind of a policy framework, because you understand that all these social and political ideals which may be present in the society, unless they are brought into a kind of a governance framework, the so-called social and cultural ideals or values, as we say, cannot be of any use unless they are part of the so-called governance framework, which may be related to those different ethnic or different ethnic communities which may be residing within the particular nation state. So here we find that multiculturalism can also be described as a policy framework to successfully, through which the states tend to successfully reach out to both native-born indigenous population and also the non-indigenous population who may be residing within that particular society, for building up a long-lasting relationship with different ethnic and religious communities that exist in the fringe of the society. In other words, multiculturalism tends to be a kind of an instrument, tends to be kind of a mechanism, tends to be kind of a governance framework through which the modern day nation state tends to reach out to both to the native born indigenous population and the non-native, non-indigenous population who may be residing within that particular human societies, and is aimed at binding them together so as to form a kind of a long-lasting relationships which will help in the task of governance and also in the building up of the society in a much more unified manner. When you talk of unified, it is not about a hierarchical sense, but it is talked about to bring about a social unity where all the communities would be able to live with a sense of peace, with a sense of justice, and also above all with a sense of unity. I think when you understand multiculturalism, we also need to understand that multiculturalism as a policy framework also tends to aim at encouraging the various communities, the diverse communities, the different communities which are present within a particular society to participate fully in the society by promotion of economic, social, and cultural integration into the dominant and distant cultures with which these different communities were not very familiar. In other words, multiculturalism also tends to aim at encouraging full participation of different communities who may be living at the margin of the society, and tends to bring them fully into the governance framework, and tends to help in the building up of social, economic, and political and cultural bonds with other communities with which they were not very familiar. In other words, it tends to help in the promotion of mutual awareness. It tends to help in the mutual spreading of knowledge about others' culture, and by spreading the knowledge about the other cultures, howsoever it may be different from one's own culture, it tends to bring about a sense of appreciation, brings a sense of unity, brings a sense of respect for the other cultures, with which the so-called communities were not very familiar with. So here, by spreading knowledge, by spreading ideas about the differences which are present in other cultures, it tends to help people to appreciate the differences which may be present in the different culture, and tends to also build up a sense of unity in terms of mutual appreciation. So we find that the contemporary modern day nation states tend to be practicing this kind of a multiculturalism, which has proved to be beneficial for the multi-ethnic countries which are present in today's world. I think when we talk of this multiculturalism in today's world, we need to remember that multiculturalism is not only being practiced by any one particular country today, but and that it is now being promoted as a state ideal or a kind of a state policy in order to ensure that the conflicts which are permanent in human societies are brought to the minimum, and the human societies are ensured to lead a peaceful life, which will ensure mutual progress, both at the level of economy and also at the level of society as well. So I think when you further define multiculturalism, we need to remember that Andrew Haywood, who has been a very prominent author, I think you'll read about him in your own literature in the internet. You also have various books written by him. Andrew Haywood, in his book on political ideology. Why we've chosen the book? Because this book is important for us simply because it tends to talk of multiculturalism from the viewpoint of governance, from the viewpoint of empowerment, and hence we look at Andrew Haywood definition of multiculturalism in his own book that is titled Political Ideologies, where he tends to have talked about two forms of multiculturalism. He tends to have brought to our attention that multiculturalism cannot be treated as a single ideal, cannot be treated as a kind of a meaning one particular thing. Rather, multiculturalism tends to be often used in two different forms for the purpose of our own society. I think, when you talk of two different purposes, we need to remember that any particular term which is an ideal can be either used as a descriptively or can be used also as normatively. So I think when Andrew Haywood tends to say that when people tend to use or refer to multiculturalism in a descriptive sense of the term, they tend to use it to primarily refer to cultural diversity. In other words, wherever there is cultural diversity, in order to describe the cultural diversity that is present amongst the different cultures within a particular society, they tend to refer multiculturalism in a descriptive sense of the word. And when you talk to normativism, when you talk of normatively or as a normative value system, multiculturalism has always implied a kind of a value which tends to be talking of positive endorsement, like celebration of communal diversity, which may be present in the society. I think when you talk of as a normative value system, multiculturalism tends to talk of the talk of a value which tends to stand for nothing but positive endorsement of different cultures in a positive manner, which tends to be in the nature of a celebration of communal diversity, which is present with a particular society. So NDA talks about the two different forms in which we human beings tend to normally use multiculturalism, both as a in their own parlance and also in their own practice. And when you talk of this further about normative aspect of multiculturalism, we need to understand that this normative aspect of multiculturalism tends to be based on either the right of different groups to respect and recognition, or to the alleged benefits that may accrue to the larger society that a nation state tends to be consisting of. Why we tend to emphasize on the value of multiculturalism? Simply because that we all know that by celebrating the diversity, by positively looking at other cultures, by not trying to focus our attention on the negative aspects of other culture, which may or may not be present in other cultures, we would be able to not only ensure our own peace and prosperity, since there will be very little scope for conflict, it will also help in the building up of the society, which will contribute towards an effective framework of governance, which will be dedicated towards the ushering of benefits for all the humankind, all the human societies which may be present within the particular nation state, rather than being burdened with the task of pure management of the conflict. When there is no conflict, then we know that the task of management or the art of governance seems to be very, very better. So here, that is how we understand that the modern nation state tend to emphasizing on multiculturalism, both as a normative value, simply because that they know by practicing the multiculturalism as a value, they will be able to ensure more positive benefits to the larger human community that may be residing within their particular society. And it will also tends to ensure that there ensure moral and cultural diversity as well. And I think when you take up another analyst, Susan Wessendorf, she tends to have pointed out that because of the current day phenomenon, which is known as human rights revolution, according to her, that there has been a kind of a more emergence, emphasized emergence of multiculturalism within the so-called present-day contemporary human society. In other words, Susan says that had there been, and today whenever we open up a newspaper, whenever we open up any kind of a literature, we tend to be coming across the fact that there are complaints of human rights deprivation on the part of which has been carried on to various communities, which tends to come in the way of proper growth of various communities, since human beings cannot survive without their basic rights being respected. I think that is how, given the fact that the rights do play an important role in the context of the building up of proper society, in the building up of proper development of human beings, the right aspect has been properly emphasized as a part of the so-called human rights framework. And here we find that within the human rights framework, because of the fact that there is enough talk on respect for human rights of human beings, we starting from UDHR, Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 1949, which even adopted, to mark which occasion the United Nations tends to celebrate the Human Rights Day on 10 December every year. We find that because of the human rights evolution, Susan Wessendorf tends to say that this tends to have contributed to increased support for modern day multiculturalism. She thinks that if there is enough talk of multiculturalism today, it's only because it has been pushed to the center stage by the talk of the so-called human rights revolution, which is being engaged in or participated in by all kind of human beings in the world over in today's time. And she says, hence, this is, and by talking of the human rights violations which are taking place in certain parts of the world, or maybe in the human societies by way of not so efficient governance, she thinks that this tends to rightfully expose the horrors of the so-called institutionalized racism, which was seen in the context of the institutional racism and ethnic cleansing, which was seen in the context of during the Hitler's time, in the context of the Holocaust. People tend to have been made more aware of the kind of negative aspects of the authoritarian political system which was followed during the Holocaust days, and tend to have made people more aware of their rights, and tend to have also contributed towards the increased emphasis on multiculturalism. Today, when you talk of the multicultural world, we find there is an increased support for multiculturalism simply because after the world has discovered the dangers which were seen during the Holocaust days, now the human societies tend to be very easily opting for multiculturalism. And today we find that if at all after 1930s, the Holocaust, the human beings have not seen any other calamity, any other kind of a very, very serious danger to their own security of human beings. It's only because that the appreciation of other cultures tend to have emerged out of the so-called gory tales that were seen during, or gory actions that were seen during the days of the Holocaust. And further, if at all there has been increased emphasis on multiculturalism, we need to remember that due to the fact that the colonized nations in Africa and Asia tend to have fought against the so-called racial injustices which were being heaped on the so-called local population during the colonial days or during the days of colonialism, and also because of the fact that there has been a kind of a long, arduous struggle against those racial indignities which were being perpetrated on the local population, people tend to have pointed out the kind of racist underpinnings which were part of the so-called colonized governance. In other words, due to the fact that many of the developing countries in Asia, Africa, Latin America tend to have fought against the colonial racist or racial prejudices which were part of the colonial rule, people tend to have switched on their attention to the task of multiculturalism. And we also find that the task of multiculturalism as a political ideal, as a social ideal, tends to have received a boost simply because of the fact that after the Second World War and when the days of colonialism tends to have come to an end, the so-called Western societies tend to have also undergone changes within their own societies, both in the task of governance and also in the direction of preservation of others' culture. Due to the changes that are being seen in the colonial countries, colonial countries, in the Second World War economy, and also due to the collapse of the European colonial system, we find that the talk has emerged of more emphasis on multiculturalism to be adopted as a social ideal, to be adopted as a political ideal, as far as ensuring every community survival is concerned. In other words, we find that that multiculturalism in the changed time, in the changed modern day contemporary times, tend to have proved to be a very, very useful mechanism, which is being followed as a strategy by the so-called modern nation state in ensuring every community's right to their survival within the so-called respective human societies. In other words, if you look into the modern day use of multiculturalism as a modern day mechanism, we can see very well that multiculturalism has been used in order to combat the widespread ideas of racism which were present in the human societies in the right from the days of the colonialism. I think when you talk of the racial indignities or racial injustices which have been practiced by the colonial power. This seems to have been brought under control by the practice of what we know as multiculturalism. I think when you talk of the further, when you look into any other example for the use of multiculturalism in the modern day states or modern day nation states or modern day societies, we can also very well see that the states tend to use multiculturalism to protect the minor communities of all types. If at all the minority, if at all we know very well that there is a lot of emphasis on the protection and preservation of the minority communities, their culture, their way of life, their traditional way of governance. These are all being done in the name of multiculturalism, and that is how I think if you look into India, if you talk of the sixth schedule, which is totally in operation in the northeast India, particularly in 4 states, Manipur, Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh, and Tripura, will find that this article, this sixth schedule is also a kind of a framework in which has ensured the survival of the minority communities in a greater sense of the term. And that is how we find that in the protection of the minority communities, the so-called modern day states are now using multiculturalism as a kind of a governance framework to ensure that not only the majority survive, also the minority communities must also have their right to survival, and that should also be respected by the modern day states. We also find that multiculturalism has also been used as a state ideal or as a state value of governance. Further, to reverse the state policies which had deprived the minorities from having full access to states' benefits. In other words, multiculturalism has also been used by the state in order to reverse the various state policies which were working against the interests of the minority community and various other communities, and tends to be guaranteeing full freedom, full access to the opportunities to the communities in order to be able to access freedom, to enjoy freedom, and also in order to be able to enjoy equality as are being promised by the so-called Western liberalism. So we understand that probably the growth of liberalism, Western liberalism, which has influenced our own democratic framework, tends to have contributed towards the practice of multiculturalism, both as a value and also as a kind of a practice of the statecraft. We find that all these developments that we talked about, we talked about the collapse of the European colonial system, this long arduous struggle of the developing countries, and also the realization of racist underpinnings of the colonial mode of governance. All these developments tend to have gave rise to a kind of a process which tend to have led towards adoption of multiculturalism in the so-called modern day sense of our own societies. And these developments tend to have not only contributed to a process which has resulted in multiculturalism, it also tends to have led the multiculturalism to be adopted as an official policy in several Western countries, including the developing countries as well. So here we can see that both the changes that came up in the post-Cold War, in the post-World War II era, tend to have contributed not only towards espousal of multiculturalism as a value, it also have led to adoption of multiculturalism by various states, both in the West and also East, as a kind of an ideal governance, which tend to have contributed towards the effectiveness of governance, and also has contributed towards the prosperity of the human society at large. So here we find that officially the multiculturalism tend to have become a policy only in the 70s. So when you talk of and we remember that in 1960s, the 60s tend to have been an era of decolonization. And here we find that following the grant of independence to a whole host of nations, which later on came to be known as developing countries, as the developing countries found themselves to be multi-ethnic in nature, to be multi-religious, to be multi-linguistic in nature, in order to be able to tackle the social problems which arose immediately in the aftermath of independence, it is seen that multiculturalism has been adopted as a value not only by the newly independent countries of the third world, which are known as developing countries. It has also been adopted as a value of governance even by the so-called countries in the West. I think multiculturalism became an official policy only in the 70s, where several nations, including Canada, tend to have adopted this policy in order to be able to cope up with the racial diversity, the cultural variety, which were present within their respective nation states. I think when you talk of Canada, we remember that in the Canadian context, the then Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, who was very well known as a political leader, tend to have adopted this multiculturalism as a state policy in 1971 when he gave a speech in the Canadian Parliament and made it and announced it to be a state policy. I think when you look into further to the nation states, we find that in the culturally diverse nation states of Asia and Africa, which we find that when we categorize them as multi-ethnic or multicultural or multi-religious and also multi-linguistic states, we find that in such culturally diverse nation states of Africa and Asia, we find that multiculturalism seems to be rather used in a descriptive sense of the term. And here we find in the descriptive sense when it is being used, the policies which are adopted in the post-independence period tend to be similar to the multicultural policies which are being followed in the Western world. In other words, we find that the Western world and the countries in the Eastern and in the East, primarily in the Asia, Africa, Latin America, tend to have followed the same policies of multiculturalism, which came to be followed by the Western countries in order to be able to cope up with the reality of multiculturalism, multi-ethnicity, multi-religiosity, and also multi-linguistic nature of their respective nation states. I think when we talk of the Canada, why Canada is being talked about, because Canada seems to have stood up as one of the leading country in the West, which seem to have practiced multiculturalism as a very, very important value in their own political framework. I think when we talk to Pierre Trudeau made a mark in the history when he announced multiculturalism to be a state policy, simply because that Canada in the post-Second World War found its own history to be more different than what it was before, what it was in the pre-war period. We understand in the pre-war period, we found that there were more native people in Canada, while in the post-Second World War period, we found that more and more wave of immigration tend to have altered the social character and the demographic character of Canadian nation. It's only because that observers tend to say that the Canada, observers have noted that Canada is probably the only country which tend to have adopted multiculturalism with all seriousness, where the multicultural ideology is being practiced by the state with strong emphasis on the social importance of immigration. I think if you talk of any immigrant country, I think Canada will be the first, simply because Canada seems to be having more immigrants than the so-called native-born population. And Canada, if you look into the history of Canadian population, one can also see that the people who are ethnically Canadian, who were originally staying in Canada much before the new wave of immigrants hit the shore, or as we say, or they came into Canada, they seem to have also migrated into other countries in the West and tend to have left the Canada as a country to be having the majority of immigrants rather than their so-called native-born population. And because of the fact that Canada got its own history altered in the post-World War II days, we find that Canadian society tend to have coped up with the multiculturalism as a framework, which has tend to have blessed Canada with very progressive, diverse, and also multicultural set of developments within their respective country. We find why we talk of Canada tends to become more progressive simply because the Canada, we will see how cleverly Canada has deployed the multicultural policies, which tends to have made Canada to be categorized as a developed country today, rather than a developing country, which is the fate of the many countries of the third world. I think when you look into Canada, we know Canada, large component Canadian population, as I said a while before, tend to be made of communities of immigrants who tend to have come from all parts of the world, primarily from Asia, Africa, Middle East, and also South Asia, Southeast Asia, and also East Asia. And that is how we find a component of the migration, component of the Canadian population tends to be consisting of more migrants than to be native-born Canadian population. And and we also find that when you look into and given the fact that the Canadism, that the multiculturalism as a practice tend to have made Canada to be shaped entirely different by the so-called immigrants. Those areas, those urban centers tend to have become more hub of a development, which tend to attracted more migrants than what used to be the case before. So here we find that Canada tend to be a country which is full of migrants simply because immigrants, simply because the Canadian development has been controlled or shaped by the immigrants, tend to have acted as a magnet for further immigration, which tends to have made Canada a kind of a fully migrant-dominated country. And also the ethnically native-born Canadian migrants have also Canadians tend to have left for other Western source, which tends to have resulted in the reduction of the native-born Canadian population and tend to have made Canada to be a nation full of the immigrants, which tend to, since they came from different culture setup, since they came from different parts of the world, they tend to have brought in different kind of cultures along with them, which tends to make Canada to be a country full of diverse cultures. But when you look into Canada, we find that in the third world, while India is a multicultural world, simply because India is always described as a multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-religious, and also multi-linguistic society, we find Canada, because of its domination by the so-called immigrants, tend to be also boasting of the same features. When you go to Canada, you will find that people probably talking of different languages, different cultures, people have different traditions, and there is no single common tradition of culture, common tradition of language, common tradition of governance, which can be found to be common to all the ethnic communities who tend to be residing in today's Canada at the present. In that case, we find that 40% of the, I think when you talk to pluralist societies, we know that like India, Canada also has become a pluralist society. And here you find in Canada, we find that 40% of the population, in the whole of Canadian population, they tend to be either non-French or they tend to be of non-British heritage. Because we understand that Canada was primarily, the native-born Canadians were a French-speaking population, and they have been now replaced by almost a population of immigrants, which tends to be not only non-French, which also is non-British in character. And that way Canada can be said to have been a pluralistic society. And over the last few hundred years, we find that the people of French and British heritage seem to have, the people of French and British heritage seem to have occupied a center stage in the history. But now, at present, we find that people of non-French heritage, people of non-British heritage tend to be in majority in the Canadian society. And today we find that this replacement by the non-British and non-French heritage seem to have presented a kind of a typical problem for the Canadian society to carry on with its effective governance system. And here we find that the urban areas and centers, as they became the place of attraction for the immigrants, and as they got more and more enlarged by the contribution of the immigrant population, both in terms of economic and other activities, they have become hub of further immigration further immigration for the immigrants to come into Canada and settle down in various parts of Canada. And today we find, when you look into Canada, we find that Toronto, which is now a city of Toronto, the most important city of Canada, seems to be a city of several ethnic and racial minorities, while it was not so in the earlier days. So today, whether you talk of Canada, you talk of Ontario, talk of Toronto, they seem to be all known as city of minorities, city of not only different cultures, they also tend to be consisting of various minority communities who tend to be residing in the present day cities within Canadian state. And we find that over 90 in Toronto, we can see over 90 different languages tend to be spoken there by the residents of the city. The residents of Toronto tend to be now speaking almost 90 languages. So that since each language tends to be part of each set of culture, we can very well understand that as many 90 languages are being spoken by the Canadian population, there must also be in Canada today present in Toronto 90 kinds of culture belonging to 90 ethnic communities who may be living in today's city of Toronto. And we find and Toronto tends to be also known as a most culturally and racially diverse city in present day Canada. We find that while other cities and regions tend to have also demonstrate the plurality of religions or origins and cultural traditions, yet we find that today all these developments tend to make Canada totally a multicultural state. So when you talk of the when we talk of the presence of multicultures or different kind of cultures within a particular nation state or within a particular human societies, we need to understand that how multiculturalism seems to have been integrated into the development framework, into the political framework, which has made Canada today a world example of excellence in multiculturalism, both in terms of governance and both in terms of value, and also tends to have become an ideal for other developing countries, which are now following Canada in various ways than one in promising the effective governance to their respective population. So I think when we talk of Canada, we need to remember that multiculturalism does not anymore signify the present reality of the Canadian population. Rather, it tends to have reached such a stage that it tends to define a positive public attitude towards that reality. In other words, that within the Canadian society, we can find that the multiculturalism is no more being treated as a kind of a social value. It has rather got translated into a practice where people tend to look at multiculturalism in a much more positive sense, in a much more endearing sense, and that they also tend to reflect them in their public attitude towards other cultures. And then that is where we find that the Canadian society tend to have become peaceful simply because that people, irrespective of the fact that they belong to different cultures, tend to be respecting other different cultures in more ways than one, and tend to have promised Canada to be a peaceful country than what it would have been had there been no sense of positive attitude towards the so-called presence of different cultures within their own societies and in their own vicinity. Here we find Canada seems to have shown a very, very world-class example in practicing multiculturalism to the benefit of all the communities, all the ethnic communities which are residing within its own territory. So here we find in Canada, when you look into it, we find that Canada seems to have reached a stage where multiculturalism is now is not only a social ideal, it is also a value that tends to mandate the growing Canadian population to develop a sense of positive respect for other cultures and to be made a positive aspect of society and Canadian way of life. Today, when you look at multiculturalism, we find that not only it is a social ideal, it has also become so much integrated into the community's practices and including the governance that it can be said to be reflected both in the Canadian way of life and also can be seen to be demonstrated as a positive aspect of value of society. In other words, we find that it has overtaken the whole of Canadian society, that it is not only being looked at as a positive phenomenon, it is also being seen in the so-called Canadian way of life. So there we find that Canadians tend to have taken up this multiculturalism both to their heart and also to their mind. So here, when we go a little further, we find that in today's multicultural Canada, we find that there is that it is being emphasized that any norm of civic behavior and the ways of social interaction must have to be respectful. In other words, the spread of multiculturalism, both as a value, has become so wide that people not only tend to adopt multiculturalism, they also tend to be practicing multiculturalism both in their daily life and also in their attitude towards other ethnic communities and also towards the task of governance. In other words, we find in Canada, nobody tends to grudge any kind of state benefit to be given to any particular community, if at all it is in need of. And that is where you find, when you compare the Canadian society and the Indian society, you'll find that Indian society tends to be rather much more noisy than Canada, simply because while in Canada they seem to have taken the multiculturalism in a positive way, in India, we will see a little later, in India probably it seems to be not the case. But since our focus is on Canada and the Canadian practice of multiculturalism, we can see very well that the state is now emphasizing that any new civic behavior, any new way of social interaction that the Canadians must be adopting, must have to emphasize on their respectfulness towards other culture. In other words, the state tends to emphasize by law that any new civic way, any kind of new social interaction must have to be respectful of other cultures and must not try to portray or project the other cultures in a negative manner to the detriment of the other minority communities who may be residing within their respective societies. And here we also find that the Canadian way of governance, the Canadian society, or in Canada, it is also emphasized that all the behaviors must also have to be supportive of existing ethno-cultural and ethno-racial pluralism, which is typical of the pluralist of communities. In other words, the state tends to emphasize that each of these new civic behavior not only will have to enhance the cause of multiculturalism. The law also says that any civic action, social interaction must also try to support the existing ethno-cultural diversity which is present within the country, and also must try to support the ethno-racial pluralism which has become the value of governance. In other words, we find that right from 1971 till today, we find that Canada seems to have adopted multiculturalism, and the Canadians, even though it tends to be comprising of the migrants, tend to have developed a sense of a positive attitude towards multiculturalism, which tends to have promised respect and trust for any divergent culture which is present with the so-called minority community within Canada. In this way, we can see that when you look into Canada's history and the present day times, we can see that the very idea of multiculturalism tend to have been carried with it the visions of a society with inter-ethnic and inter-racial harmony. In other words, today we can see that the so-called multicultural policies tend to have contributed towards inter-ethnic solidarity and also interracial harmony. That people tend to be not feeling any sense of alienation from the state, any sense of alienation from other cultures, and people tend to be rather more involved in other cultures and traditions by way of showing, by way of a positivity, rather than demonstrate any sense of negativity. So in Canada, we find that people tend to have taken, as I said before, these so-called multicultural policies both to the heart and also to the mind. In other words, they tend to be emotionally very much attached to multiculturalism, to the differences of cultures which may be present with other communities, and tend to be also respectful of other cultures, howsoever different may be from one's own culture. थोड़ा बाद में क्या है ये? lecture there. So in this way, we find that multiculturalism tend to have almost become a, not only tend to have become a state policy, it also tends to have become a policy, become a factor of emotions for all the individuals who may be living within the so-called present-day Canada. And here we find that no more, we find that that the ethnic groups tend to be living in isolation from each other. Rather, there seems to be a sense of ethnic group cohesion and individual fulfillment, which is now realized could not have been attained without multiculturalism having become part of the so-called Canadian state policy. So I think one further discusses Canadian example of multiculturalism, one also gets to see that that people tend to have better realized that if multiculturalism, if they tend to be respectful of others' culture, they can be, that particular value can be further realized in an atmosphere of mutual trust and respect for all communities and individual person to do as they seem to be enjoying of doing the things on their own, rather than bringing them to any kind of a framework. In other words, that today one can see that in Canada it is realized that it is better to allow people to do things their own way, in their own sweet way, as they think they will be able to attain their personal goals, and also allow the growth of a mutual trust, environment of mutual trust within the Canadian society, rather than trying to subject any community or communities to come to any kind of a generalized expected way of living. And that is how probably by promoting the divergences, by respecting the divergences, by creating a kind of an environment of mutual trust and recognition, Canada has been able to not only promote individual fulfillment of their goals, it has also promoted, it has also helped the communities to fulfill their own goals, which is nothing but preservation and promotion of one's own culture in one's own way, without being brought under the sovereign control of without bringing them under the control sovereign or under any kind of a majority control of the majority groups which may be residing within that particular country. Like, I think when you look into since 1971, we can see that the series of policies and programs which have been introduced by the Canadian government at various levels of government tend to have been designed very well so as to address the plurality of cultural expression which is now found in the Canadian society, which later on came to be designated as nothing but multiculturalism. In other words, we find if we go to Canada, I think Canada is often categorized as a land of smiles. It's only because that you find that nobody seems to be afraid of any other person or any other community, be it the government agency or be it any other ethnic community, simply because that everyone has been assured of promotion and preservation of our own culture, one's own tradition, and also one's own individual way of achieving their own goals, which tend to be leaving a sense of smile on everyone's face within the so-called Canadian society. And that's how, and this has become a fact from 1971, when the series of policy and programs which were initiated by Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau tend to have been so designed that it only addresses the so-called plurality of cultural expression, which is a fact of Canadian society. In other words, all the government policy programs tend to have taken into account the demands of the plurality of communities, the cultural demands of the plurality communities or of the diverse communities who are present with Canada and tend to be popularly known as the policies of multiculturalism. So in that context, we can see that the Canadian government policy and programs tend to have become very, very successful simply because it has not contributed to either growth or continuation of any kind of conflict. Rather, it has brought down the number of conflicts within the Canadian society and also tend to have ensured both community and individual achievement of goals as decided by themselves without them being subjected to any other's control or any other's authority. So these policies and programs which are adopted by the Canadian government tend to have been hinged on the notion that ethnic and racial pluralism can be a legitimate and enduring expression of unique Canadian life. In other words, if at all we find that the Canadian state has been respectful of the ethnic traditions, respectful of the ethnic cultures, it's only because that it is realized that the Canadian policies and programs which were initiated in the post-1971 period, which is known as multiculturalism, tend to have been totally based on the simple reason that ethnic and racial pluralism, it has recognized this to be a very, very legitimate and also an enduring fact. In other words, the Canadian state policies tend to have accepted the fact that there is a multiplicity of people, there is a multiplicity of human society, and hence there is a multiplicity of human culture, and hence any policy, any program that the government would like to enact must also take into account the plurality of cultures, the plurality of traditions, and hence must address every culture's requirement, every culture's need or requirement, rather than deprive any community of their self-made goals or their community-led goals for the benefit of their respective communities. So here, Canadian policies tend to accept the fact that ethnic and racial pluralism is a legitimate and also is an enduring expression of a unique Canadian life, because they regarded this ethno-pluralism or racial pluralism as a unique character of Canadian society or unique character of Canadian life, and hence they recognized it as a legitimate thing. Their policies seem to have also followed to promote those ethno-pluralism or as we call it racial pluralism as is present within the Canadian society, and hence and because it regarded this pluralism as a kind of a legitimate thing, it tends to have not got into the trap which was seen in the policies of Hitler, where Hitler not only wanted domination of one community, it also tends to have made other communities subservient to the so-called majority community that was known as German in 1930s during the period of Holocaust. So here we find that the federal government policy of 1971 multiculturalism tend to have reflected the modicum national response to prevailing ethnic and racial pluralism. In other words, we find that the 1971 multicultural policy tend to have been reflected the modicum national response to the so-called prevailing ethnic and racial pluralism, which was present very much in the Canadian society. We also have to remember that not only it is the central government which has only made the policies of multiculturalism, we can also see within Canada that the local governments, the municipal governments within Canada tend to have also introduced their own multicultural policies, which has again resulted in the promotion and enhancement of the plurality of cultures of all the communities that are present within the Canadian society. So here we find that when you look into little longer, you'll find that with the federal government, with the local government, with the municipal government having come forward with the various multicultural policies, we find the multiculturalism tend to have become a focus of public policy and tend to have also become part of the Canadian identity in the light of its earlier historical experience. And we can also see the Canadian that it has also become very much an official Canadian policy, both of the central government and also of the various other two levels of governments within the present day Canada. I think when you compare with the Indian example of multiculturalism, we find that in India, although India seems to represent the diversity of culture, diversity of tradition, and India seems to be also a multi-ethnic community, we find that in Indian context, we find that probably the experience of multiculturalism seems to be rather different than what we see in case of Canada. In India, we find that although there are different communities, but here we find that the government policies tend to have been not successful to the extent of promoting and enhancement of the cultures of the various ethnic minorities and ethnic populations who tend to be residing in various parts of the state and tend to be rather dominated more by the so-called majority community, which tends to be majority within the Indian society. I think in India we only find that the racial diversity, the plurality of minorities can be seen only in India's northeastern part, while in the other part of India we find that India having been dominated by the so-called Hindi-speaking majority community, which seems to be not showing the kind of positive attitude which is seen in case of Canada on the part of the other communities towards the cultural diversity of various other communities who may be residing within that particular territory. And here we find, and we also find that despite the fact that the Indian government has enacted the policy of positive discrimination, which is to upkeep and to respect the community needs of enhancement, community needs of social progress within the country, we still find that kind of a policy, which could be probably could result in the multiculturalism, tends to have been not taken in the right earnest, where the so-called India's caste system seems to be totally opposed to the so-called policy of reservation and tends to not contribute towards the growth and promotion of interests of the so-called minority community. I think when you look into India further, we'll find that in India is now almost going to be 75 years of independence, and yet we find that the kind of cultural similarity, the kind of cultural divergence, and the kind of respect and the kind of mutual trust which is being seen in the context of Canada is yet to be seen in India, and that is why we find that much of the times when India tends to be a zone of conflict. It is only that many of the communities tend to be rather locked up in conflict with each other, rather than have learned to live with a sense of belongingness to the particular nation state, to the particular human society that all of them they are part of. I think we have also seen that how the changes in the political scenario tends to be contributing to social insecurity amongst the various ethnic populations residing within our own country, that is India, and tends to be leading the various minorities to live in a sense of fear, to live in a sense of distraught, to live in a sense of violence, which often has also proved to be true given the changing political equation within the Indian society amongst the various communities. I think we also now see that immediately after, and in this case, we find that India, although has been able to somewhat manage to deal with the ethnic diversity of its own population, howsoever imperfectly, and tend to be boasting of a moderately successful polity, yet due to social differences, we find that India has not been able to show the kind of balance that is regarded to be shown in the case of unity and diversity, which has been promised by the India's constitution. I think given the fact that Indian society is different from the Canadian society simply because the history of India and Canada seems different, we find that India's success story as far as pursuit of multicultural policies seem to be very mixed, given the fact that the politics seem to be changing very fast, and with the changes in politics, the social unity that seems to be existing amongst the various communities within the Indian society tend to be undergoing changes, which tends to make India again to trace its own path towards the policies of multiculturalism, which will probably result in the promotion of unity and solidarity amongst the diversity of ethnic communities, and will probably influence and will probably socially influence the ethnic communities to live in peace with each other, and live in an atmosphere of mutual trust and also mutual support, which probably would result in India to be a kind of a united, peaceful country that can be a match to Canada. I think I will end it here, and if we'll have 5 to 10 minutes to take up questions. If you have questions, you can ask in the chat box. I will try to answer them. And as far as your PowerPoint is concerned, you will be able to give in the PowerPoint after the lecture is over. All right. Thank you then. Hello. Is there a question? Okay, let me see what questions you are asked. I hope multiculturalism seems to be democratic policies. We will see what questions are there in the net. Well, I think somebody has asked about the question of, somebody has asked about why do Punjabis tend to migrate to Canada. We all understand that as we were saying, that the Canada become multicultural. Canada became today's Canada in contrast to the to earlier Canada, simply because that the post Second World War era facilitated frequent immigration into Canada, and as migrants tend to have contributed to Canadians' development by developing cities and other areas through their own contribution of scientific and other technical know-how. Those centers of urban centers and cities and other areas tend to have become the magnet or become hub of various other development activities, which tend to have influenced the Punjabi people to look for migration to Canada in search of better future. And that is where we find that any particular area which tend to be promising development and more economic benefit, and also availability of more employment opportunities, it tends to become a center of immigration, where more and more people tend to be influenced to immigrate. And that is where I think, given the fact that Punjabis are, before Green Revolution, the Punjab was not a kind of a very developed state. Punjab has only become developed state only after it has become, it got the benefits of the Green Revolution. The Punjabis tend to have developed a habit of flocking to foreign countries in search of livelihood. And also the second factor for immigrating to Canada is also that they tend to have their relatives staying in Canada already. And given the fact that Indians tend to live a life of their life befitting a family, more and more Punjabis tend to migrate to Canada in order to be united with their own family members or relatives. And that is how we find there is a continuous immigration of Punjabis to Canada. I think I don't have all right. Okay, you wrote to me. I don't have any questions. There are messages. I don't find any questions. Is there any question? What role does a teacher have handling a multicultural classroom? Well, I think, when we're talking of multiculturalism, I think multiculturalism is nothing but mutual respect for any kind of a different culture or different tradition that people belonging to other communities may have. I think, within the classroom, since we know that much of the classroom is also multicultural in the sense that students tend to attend classes and higher education institutions from different backgrounds, the teacher does have to keep in mind that in our own attitude, in our own behavior, in our own way of interaction with the students, we must have respect for each other's culture, and we should not be having any hierarchical notion and any hierarchical notion about the about any culture being dominant over other cultures, and must also be respectful of all the cultural traditions, be it belonging to a majority community or be it belonging to a minority community. So if at all, in our own way of approach, in our own way of behavior, in our own way of attitude, if we do not have this majority and minority attitude questions in mind, we probably would be able to become more effective. We'll be able to be more effective as a teacher within the classroom. Well, multicultural society, we all understand it is certainly partly a case of globalization. We all understand that globalization tends to be contributing towards the emerging multiculturalism in various communities, simply because that more and more people tend to be traveling in today's days of globalization, given the fact there is easy and smooth availability of high-speed transportation, which tends to be contributing towards enthusiastic migration on the part of the people. But on the other hand, we should also see that the multiculturalism and globalization started from 1990s onwards, although it is different from the globalization which existed before. We need to remember that multiculturalism also has become is also a post-World War II phenomenon, where, given the kind of destruction which was seen in case of many parts of the world, that there was a huge need of people in order to be brought into the society, into the various countries, in order to be able to mend the industry and other kind of systems which are present in the society for the faster socioeconomic growth of those respective countries. So multiculturalism can be said to be both a post-World War II phenomenon and also a post-globalization phenomenon. And when you talk of the multiculturalism, we'll find that given the fact that there are differences in various cultures, the governance of the state tends to be rather a kind of a challenging task. I think much of the democracy, as we see, that it is not only the countries in the West, the countries in the developing world also tend to have undertaken the multiculturalism as a policy of governance, simply because they have discovered in the current example that only by switching on to multiculturalism as a normative value, they would be able to make their society more united. They would be able to ensure peace and justice to the community side by side, the developmental aspect which they are taking care of. I think, if you talk of, since, we have seen how the human societies tend to have emerged to be a unified society, where we find that the multiculturalism tend to be that the multicultural society tends to result in more of a cooperation, mutual cooperation than of isolation. I think multicultural societies are also those societies which have become more developed, more advanced, given the fact there is a intermixing of skills, there is intermixing of ideas, and also which not only have contributed towards the growth of economy, it has also contributed towards the growth of social solidarity in today's world, which is rather very rare in certain contexts. I think today, if you talk of multicultural societies, we imagine societies which are not only peaceful, which are also becoming economically progressive. We'll find that the more the society is multicultural, the more there is mutual trust among the communities, the more the society is going to be a developed one, and the more economically productive those societies will become. I think, Dr. Rathore, I must have answered your question. I think it is your lunch time. If you have no more questions, I will thank all of you for having listened to the